iPhone project was codenamed Purple. It started back in 2005, when a group of 1,000 Apple engineers were called to work on it. The project was so secretive that the hardware team did not know what the software was, and software team never got to see the hardware. The engineers didn't even know the dimensions of the product. They basically had to work on a bunch of wooden boxes. Hardly anyone in the company had seen it before Steve Jobs finally revealed it on stage. The iPhone truly was a groundbreaking product. It was an absolutely high-tech phone for its time. It could do a lot of things that no phone had ever done before. The Time magazine named iPhone as the best invention of the year, and hailed it as the phone that changed the phones forever. Apple's iPhone wasn't the first iPhone. It was Cisco Systems who owned the trademark for the name iPhone and also the phone. A dispute erupted when Apple said that they were to call their fancy new phone as iPhone. Steve Jobs negotiated with Cisco and settled the dispute, and they both agreed to use the trademark. During the dispute, Apple were considering other names to be used. Among them were Telepod, iPad and Mobi. And the rest, as you know, is history. iPhone has become a giant killer for Apple. It is the most successful product line in the company's history and probably in world history in recent years. Since its inception back in 2007, it has sold over 1 billion units and has transformed into a cultural and an economic phenomenon. Today, iPhone isn't just a phone, it's one of the most desired objects on the planet. A recognizable status symbol and much more. It's hard to think of any other product that can replicate the success of the iPhone. Although Apple develops its own processors, they outsource it to Samsung for manufacturing since Apple doesn't have a manufacturing unit. The reason behind Apple sticking with Samsung is because they are capable of supplying them with the large quantities that they require. Samsung produces integrated circuits, parts for computers, televisions, and many other consumer electronics. After all, they are just parts made by Samsung and distributed to companies who need them, and Apple is one of them. There are over 1,000 companies that make smartphones, but Apple takes in all of the profits. The share of Apple profits in the last quarter rose to 103%. That's because rest of the manufacturers reported a loss of 3%. Even Samsung reported a loss in the smartphone business due to the Galaxy Note 7 issue. The key to Apple's dominance in the smartphone business is that it can charge much higher price for its phones, as it uses a different operating system. Its rivals mainly use the Android OS from Google. So many manufacturers have to cut the price to stay in the competition. Even though the iPhone was a revolutionary product, there was something missing. It was the App Store that made all the difference. Think about what the functionality of your phone would have been if the App Store or the Play Store were not present. The iPhone would turn out to be a device that looked cool and was cool to use had it not been for the App Store. The App Store turned the tiny market of app software into a gigantic one. Millions of apps have been downloaded, and the mobile app space is a huge industry today. In 2016, Apple paid nearly $25 billion to the app developers. Apple patented like crazy when they were developing the original iPhone. When Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone to a delighted Macworld, he said Apple had protected it with more than 200 patents. They even registered a patent for the iPhone's packaging. The U.S. Patent Office awarded Steve Jobs and 16 other designers a patent for the iPhone's packaging. Since then, they added a lot more number of patents for the device. The iPhone business has become very crucial for Apple in recent years. It accounts for more than 60% of Apple's profits, and that's equal to a whopping $140 billion. The iPhone business for Apple
is now bigger than Google and Microsoft combined.
The revenue from iPhone grew year by year, making Apple the most valuable on planet Earth. This was Tim's response on how important was the iPhone business to Apple.
It's very important.
Well, it's more than that.
It's very
Oh,
important.
come on, it's more than that. It's more than 60% of your revenue.
Yes, yes.
That's more than very important.
It's incredibly important.
Exactly, even more.
It's
I mean, it is the engine driving the company.
those,
It is the engine driving the company.
well, those other engines are pretty good too.
Yeah, but 60% of your revenue.
Yes, it's hugely important.
Did you see anything common between these iPhones? It's the timing, guys. The timing on any iPhone ad is always 9:41 until it used to be 9:42 in the early ads. The reason behind it is Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone for the very first time at 9:41 at Macworld back in 2007.
Hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it and do subscribe to our channel for more videos.